Will Smith has no idea.
People that left on the bases and left on the bases. Do you leave them on the bases?
Peter Piper picked a pack of pickled peppers.
You feeling good? You feeling the flow? You feeling it?
He sells seashells by the seashore.
You remember that episode on Seinfeld when he had the brassiere and he was yelling at everybody? His dad was?
It was the man's ear.
The man's ear.
It's called the man's ear.
Yeah. And then all I did is yell. The entire episode was so great. They were like, it's such a great idea. They loved it all. Anyways, hey everybody, welcome to Swing Batter Rounding Third. I am your host, Brendan. What am I doing here with these wonderful gentlemen, these scholars, these branding aficionados? Well, I'm here to do Swing Batter with you. Todd, how you doing? How you been? How's life?
Man, you always ask me this, and I always try to come up with something original. I just got to tell you, I'm at peace.
Ooh.
I'm at peace. Things are good.
Are your feet in the ground? Are they buried?
As they used to say on Star Search, I kept my feet on the ground, and I'm aiming for the stars.
Keep thinking when that dirt starts to like crowd around your feet, do you get more peaceful knowing that you're going to end up there, or is it like less peaceful? Like,
It's very morbid.
Are you peaceful with your ending, or are you just peaceful in your place?
I'm peaceful with the fact that I'm probably over the hump.
Over the hump. Well, speaking of people over the hump, how you doing, Dad? How's life?
Past that hump a long time ago.
Oh,
Yeah,
Just coasting now. Yeah, everything seems to be fine. I didn't get any bill collectors calling today, so I guess we're doing all right.
so you're lonely. Is that why you called me and Todd a couple times
Well,
today?
no, now that
Hey.
you asked, a refrigerator repairman showed up to the door unannounced to fix our refrigerator.
was your refrigerator broken?
Well, it decided not to make ice, so we called to ask him a question, and they never got back to us. He just shows up.
That service.
Oh.
That service. You can't
That's
even
pretty
pay
good.
for that. You can't pay for that service nowadays.
Yeah, he's quite a guy. He just took the part out and gave us a brand new part. We said, "What's wrong with it?" He said, "Nothing. It froze up. I'll give you a brand new one." I said,
Isn't the ice maker supposed to freeze up?
Not the part that needs to make the
certain
ice.
parts, no. Apparently.
There's a real special trait. I mean, the refrigerator is an era of design. We should have a museum for refrigerators. In fact, there probably is one for those that want to just comment and link the video to those who visited the refrigerator museum, just so everyone knows where they can go. Speaking of things that are running, before we get into rounding third, baseball players are running this year.
Yes, they are.
Holy moly.
Like, the road runner exists, and I am ecstatic about it. It's fantastic to see these guys. My favorite today in a game.
Don't forget to tape out your trash cans.
Yeah, you can't forget that. Don't even forget taking out your trash cans. My favorite thing that happened today is the Angels pitched out to get the runner. It wasn't even close.
Yeah.
They didn't get him?
No, he threw the ball down. He shouldn't even have thrown it. Like, the second baseman walked off the bag. Like, this was nice. I appreciate you throwing it. Appreciate you keeping me in the play, but like this, he's been here for a while. Like, I think baseball, how long ago was it when players smoked and played? Like, smoked cigarettes on the dugout how long ago are we talking before they went to tobacco?
We had to go out, in the 90s? The mid-80s, right? Hernandez was smoking heaters in the sideline.
Yeah, in the 80s he was. So,
But nobody was batting with a cigarette, right? Like, nobody was up there with a...
No.
I've watched people do amazing things while smoking during massive outages and fixing plants, and you would not believe it, and they have a cigarette in their mouth and they're rocking and rolling.
Well, that's tough. I don't know. I saw on Twitter that the players actually don't like the bigger bases, but they love the pitch clock.
They don't like the bigger... Well, this is a big question for humanity. Do you like it bigger or smaller, or is it just the right size, going back to the man's ear? So these are things that again, these are questions that never will be answered. And luckily, there are some players that probably do like them a little bit bigger than they are today, and some that want it a little smaller. Like if you're thinking you're Jose there on the Astros, you probably want a smaller base because with a bigger base, he looks even smaller.
Right.
I mean, he's sitting there with his foot and he's feeling a little more like, I got a little more anxiety here. Where Aaron Judge is like, this base is still tiny. Like you can make it a bigger base. I'm not threatened.
Right.
I know my buddy Jose over here is threatened, but I'm not. So here we go. Story time with Dad, rounding third. Forget about all your troubles, everybody. Whatever you're going through in life, put down the pipe. Sit back, put your feet up on your desk, and take a listen to our favorite episode, rounding third. Dad, what do you got for us? Is it depressing? Is it fantastic?
No, this is a wonderful story.
Oh, good.
I'm going to tell you a story about a very famous baseball player. I'll give you a clue. He's in the Hall of Fame, even though he stood only 5'7", and he's most well known for this quote: "It's never over till it's over." So before I reveal, although most of you probably already know where I'm going, just a little flaming hot Cheeto to get me started. We're, of course, today going to talk about Lawrence Peter Yogi Berra.
Ooh.
Now,
Yes.
Yogi's famous for many, many quotes. For example, they asked him if he went to Stan Musial's restaurant in St. Louis. He said, "Oh, nobody goes there anymore because you can't get in because of the line." He has many, many, which I'll come up with later. But given that, the guy was only 5'7", kind of a goofy-looking guy if you see pictures of him. And I think lost in all the humor of his stories is what an amazing baseball player Yogi was. So just give you a couple highlights. All-Star 18 times. Won the World Series as a player 10 times. More than any other player in baseball history. He had a career batting average of .285, hit 358 home runs, 1,430 runs batted in. He was one of only 6 players to win the American League Most Valuable Player Award 3 times. Widely regarded as one of the greatest catchers in baseball. So let's take a little bit about Yogi's life. Yogi grew up in St. Louis, across the street from his lifelong friend Joe Garagiola. He signed with the Yankees in 1943 and immediately went into the armed services. In the Navy, he was a gunner mate during the Normandy landings, where he earned a Purple Heart. He came back and at the age of 21 started playing minor league baseball for the Yankees. He came up in 1949 and played with the Yankees through 1962. He was a power hitter, great defensive catcher. He played 18 seasons with the Yankees before retiring after the 1963 season. Afterwards, he spent a year as their manager. Then he joined the Mets in 1965 as a coach, and he briefly played with the Mets. Berra remained with the Mets for the next decade, serving the last 4 years as their manager, and was famously known as the guy who never knew Tom Seaver's last name. He thought Tom Seaver's last name ended with an S, so he called him Seavers the whole time he was there. He returned to the Yankees in '76. He coached for them for 8 seasons, and then he coached at a couple other teams not of significance to the story of New York. He appeared as a player, coach, or manager in 13 out of 15 World Series in a row. Because at those times, the Yankees were in almost every World Series. Now, let's see. He caught Don Larsen's perfect game in the World Series. Here's some amazing things about him. Appeared in 14 World Series, including 10 with championships. Both are records. In Game 3 of the 1947 World Series, he hit the first pinch hit home run in World Series history. He was an All-Star 15 times, as I said before, AL MVP. He never finished lower than 4th in MVP voting from 50 to 57. He received MVP votes in 15 consecutive seasons, tied with Barry Bonds and only second to Hank Aaron in baseball history. Now, the Yankees from 49 to 55 had Mickey Mantle and Joe DiMaggio on the team. However, in those years, Berra led the Yankees at RBIs 7 consecutive seasons. Had more RBIs than those guys. One of the most notable games, of course, I already said, was the perfect game that he caught of Dom Larson's. Now, here's an amazing stat. This little guy, he was known for being able to hit bad pitches. You throw a bad pitch, and he seemed to put the bat on the ball. He had more home runs than strikeouts in a season. 5 times he did that. More home runs than strikeouts. Striking out just 12 times in 597 at-bats in 1950. Paul Richards of the Houston organization said, by far the most clutch hitter on the Yankees was Berra. I'd rather face Mickey Mantle than Berra with the game on the line. He led the American League in catching games 8 times, double plays, putouts, assists. He left the game with AL records for catcher putouts, and also one of only 4 catchers to field 1,000 in a season, playing in 88 consecutive errorless games. He was a great defensive catcher, clutch hitter, hardly ever struck out. Mostly, I would say, he was amazing for how he always ended up on winning teams. We know about his run with the Yankees and how well they did, but I give one other example. In 1973, Yogi was managing the Mets, and it was deep into August that they were in last place. And they asked him about, what are you going to do? You're going to start playing for next year. And that's where he came up with the line, it's never over till it's over. They went on a great winning streak and made the playoffs. Went to the playoffs in 1973 and beat the Big Red Machine with Pete Rose and all the Johnny Bench and all these guys, taking them to the World Series where they played all the way to Game 7 before losing to Oakland. So Yogi had them right on the midst of actually winning a World Series with not a very good team. So an awful lot about Yogi Berra. I think the best way to close is to remind you of some of his very famous quotes. While describing to his friend how to get to his house, he said, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. He said, you can observe a lot by watching. Love is the most important thing in the world, but baseball's pretty good too. He also said, the future ain't what it used to be. I take a 2-hour nap from 1 till 4. So he had many, many great quotes. I think the one I like the best is his quote about percentages, where he said, 90% of baseball is half mental. But amazing, through all the humor and jokes about Yogi, he was an unbelievable player and much more a major part of the Yankee success than people gave him credit for, with Mantle and DiMaggio and later on Roger Maris and all these guys. But Yogi was always there, and that statistic of strikeouts to home runs is mind-boggling to me. You just don't see that where a home run hitter doesn't strike out. But that's my story today about the great Lawrence Peter Yogi Berra.
I always remembered him growing up. Everybody would talk about like the stuff that he said, and you always remembered him for like the goofy quotes, and then, but you never considered him as the type of player that he was, or how good he was as a player. Is because if I didn't grow up watching him. He had retired
Right.
By the time I think he coached the Mets the year that I was born, but he had retired, and I just never thought of him as like an imposing player. And so when you said that thing about Mickey Mantle. So I'd rather face Mantle than Berra because he was so clutch. And that's a remarkable statement to make.
Well, and then in fact, with all those guys on the team, he led the team in RBIs 7 years in a row.
But how durable he was too for playing catcher at a position and at a time when the protective equipment wasn't as there, but like to be that durable and to be that good over such a long period of time is remarkable, really remarkable.
There's so many funny stories about him. At one time, he was rooming with Bobby Brown, the Yankees third baseman, who was at the time in medical school. And when they went back to the room, Bobby Brown would take out medical books that he was studying for medical school. Yeah. And Yogi decided he would become a reader. So he bought a stack of comic books. And here he was reading comic books while this guy's reading medical journals.
Oh, man. That's funny. You looked at I was looking at some of the stats on Baseball Reference about him, and just some of the his rank. They have this ranking for Hall of Fame catchers, and so they have the Hall of Fame catchers ranked. Johnny Bench is obviously number one, and then you have Gary Carter's number two, and this is the catcher JAWS leaders. JAWS is a way of calculating, whether or not where a player ranks as far as average catchers that are in the Hall of Fame. Then you have Ivan Rodriguez, then Carlton Fisk, then Mike Piazza, then Yogi Berra is number 6. Obviously, I think offense plays a big thing in that because Piazza was not the offensive catcher when I'm looking, or the defensive catcher that Yogi Berra was.
I think a lot of that's emotional. I think Yogi Berra's statistics dwarf Carlton Fisk, but
yeah, well, but then right behind Yogi Berra is Joe Mauer, who retired in 2017, and I think this coming year is the first year he's going to be eligible to be voted into the Hall of Fame. And then, after him, you got Bill Dickey, you got Mickey Cochran, Buck Ewing, Roy Campanella.
Can you imagine the Yankees? They had Bill Dickey as their catcher for years, and he was replaced by Yogi Berra.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Well, the Yankees, for a long, long time, had just the best of everything, best players, all that stuff. So, but awesome. And the fact that he was in World War II before joining baseball, right? Kind of, because we had talked about, Ted Williams before, how he had lost some key years of his career, going into the war. Would Yogi Berra have been in baseball earlier?
I don't think so, because he was in the minors in 46. So maybe not, but it just was a different era. Those guys didn't think twice about serving their country.
No. He got a Purple Heart, too. Do you know what he was injured for?
No, I don't.
Yeah. I see Brendan as a version of Yogi Berra.
I'm a version. I'm a scrapper.
He's a clutch hitter?
You come up with clever things to say that are entertaining.
No, I'll take it.
They don't make, so they sound like they make sense, and then you think about it, and then you say, wait a second.
But the best part about what I say is because I keep the ball moving, you can't go back and revisit it. I've already moved on to another segue.
That's right.
I'm almost like a New York City subway.
That's
like, you don't know which train I'm on, but I'm moving all the time. People have to be on their toes when you're playing word games. So he won. Well, the Yankees won 10 titles while he was playing with them, which is wild.
From 1949 to 1962, the Yankees only missed 2 World Series.
That's just wild.
And one of the 2, the Giants were in, and the other one, the Dodgers, but they had moved to L.A. So that was the first World Series in 15 years that a New York team did not play in it, and the Dodgers won it. But they were the L.A. Dodgers. But New York dominated baseball. I have a friend when I was in college, and he said, yeah, as a kid in New York, you just assume the World Series is going to be played in New York because it always was.
Yeah. The story about it, that he had that conflict with the Yankees that lasted until 1999 when he was fired by Steinbrenner.
Yes.
In April, he was really excited because they had brought in his son from Pittsburgh to be a player, and Steinbrenner in the spring had declared that Yogi was safe from being fired, and sure enough, in April, with the Yankees at 6-10, Steinbrenner fired him, and he stayed away from Yankee Stadium until 1999.
He didn't go back until Steinbrenner personally came to his house to apologize.
A man of principle.
Yep. Well, I think was really hurt because he felt that he had job security from Steinbrenner. And I mean, they only gave him 16 games.
Yeah. Geez, at that rate, half the Major League Baseball today would be fired.
Yeah, Steinbrenner had no problem firing people.
Yeah, he was a little impatient.
Yeah.
Quick to the trigger. He's one of those, you would collect data on him as a manager and be like, well, you replace your talent rather quickly, so no one feels secure in their job. But he's like, perfect. I don't want anyone feeling secure in their job. They may get fired just because I roll out of bed the wrong way. It's pretty wild.
Did he have big hands?
I have no way of telling that.
I gotta believe this guy at 5'7", if he's going to be a catcher in Major League Baseball, he'd have to have some genetically mutated mitts on him that allowed him to be a catcher and yeah. Usually when you come across baseball players and you shake their hand, you're like, this guy's got a massive paw on him.
A couple wild stats. I mean, this is something to me. Maybe they had to turn a lot of double plays. His double play numbers are way, way, way low.
Yeah.
For a guy who hits the ball, I mean,
he wasn't a fast runner.
Yes, he's not a fast runner, but there's men on the base all the time with the Yankees. So, and he hit garbage. He was not known. I mean, he didn't strike out a lot by any standards, but he also didn't walk a lot. He wasn't high in either of those categories. So he kind of he went after it. So if you pitched the ball, he was going to go after it and try to hit the ball, which would make you think he's going to hit a lot of ground double plays. 16 was the most he had in a single season.
Oh my gosh. We got players who got that already this year.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're not wrong about the grounded double play stat. Especially it's pretty wild.
How good was his little league team if he grew up next door to Joe Garagiola?
I don't know.
Well, they just made him different. This is what you were going to do. They just probably played field ball all day, every day. Played with all sorts of things through God knows what.
And he was the one in the outfield.
Yeah, that was
Mazurowski's home run.
They said that amazingly, when they started to go to younger catchers, he became a good defensive left fielder. I didn't ever know he was good, but what I read, they said he became a really good defensive left fielder. I said, I don't know how, but he knew the game. He understood the game.
Yeah,
I think he knew the batters. I think if you're talking an era before, obviously, computers, an era before any of that, he knew these batters. He knew where they're going to hit the ball. He knew where they're going to hit the ball. He knew how a pitcher was going to throw it. So he used that knowledge to make sure he wasn't going to put himself in a bad situation. That's the only thing that makes sense for me from a double play perspective, too, because if you have these pitchers, and you don't know what's coming, he knew everybody. So he probably had a fantastic memory. Just a fantastic memory. And he memorized people probably by either nicknames, numbers, because, again, you say you got names wrong all the time, but it was a way that probably helped him memorize people. Rather than get the name right, you get the name wrong, you memorize them forever.
But how much of that was him putting it on to kind of entertain people, knowing that it was entertaining and that type of thing? You know what I mean? Sometimes you play it up a little because you get laughs at first.
I read that, being in New York and a celebrity in New York, that he and his wife got a part in a Broadway play.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So just being in New York, all that stuff worked. There was a famous incident when he was managing the Yankees that kind of led to his firing. They didn't win the pennant, and there was they did actually had a pretty good year, but there was an incident on the bus where the Yankees had this player. His last name was Linz, and he was playing a harmonica on the bus. And I think it was after a loss, and Yogi was mad, and he told him, "Stop playing that." And the guy couldn't hear him, so he yelled back, "What did you say?" And Mickey Mantle yells out, "Play louder." So he did, and Yogi got up and slapped the harmonica out of his hands, and it was like, oh my gosh, did he really do that? And they said, it caused all kinds of problems on the team. That's doubtful, but the harmonica incident was quite a joke.
Yeah. Well, if you've ever sat around a harmonica for too long, can you blame him?
I mean, those are probably long bus rides. And all you takes is an 0 for 5 save for you to be really, really on the edge. And you're just like, that damn harmonica is throwing me off my game.
No more harmonica. No more harmonica.
Well, Yogi Berra, there it is. I'm sure everyone's got way deeper stories because this guy's a true essence of history of baseball.
Yep.
This is a great story to put your kids to bed to. I can tell you that much.
In massive ears.
Yeah. Well, and the obvious stuff is out there. A cartoon character was named after him, Yogi Berra.
Right. Yeah.
Remembered forever.
Yep.
All right, folks. That's our story for rounding third. That's
it kind of pauses like, well, that plane landed.
I'm ready for bed. We're done talking about Yogi Berra. We're ready to wrap up the story. Are there any final thoughts about Yogi Berra, Dad?
Well, yeah, I don't know anybody that didn't like Yogi Berra. People who even hated the Yankees didn't have any gripe with Yogi Berra. Yeah, he was just a lovable guy.
He did the dirty work.
Yeah.
Do the dirty work. People love you for doing the dirty work. How do you hate a catcher? I mean, if no one looks at a catcher in baseball, it's like, man, that guy isn't trying. You can say that about every other position. And the other thing about it is surprising about him is he went to Todd's point, went play the outfield. He didn't play first. He didn't go and like, oh, I need a DH, which he could have. He goes and plays in the outfield.
There were no DHs back then. But anyways.
I mean, but fair for history buffs. Another swing batterism. So it's he goes in the outfield instead of first base, which is kind of surprising. But tracking fly balls and running around like he was.
Yeah, hitting a cutoff man, all that stuff. Sure.
Probably. New York Times did an article about Yogi Berra's hands.
How big they are?
They said, well, they're not going to win a beauty prize, but they're going to win championships.
Todd, if you're the catcher in baseball back then, his hands must have been beat to hell.
They look like just mitts with like carrots coming out of them.
Oh, so they were just thick.
They're just like thick hands. I don't know. I'm looking at pictures right now, scrolling through.
Well, make sure you
get a lot of rings on them.
Delete your history. You don't need the wife finding out what you're searching. Why are you looking at these hands? You don't understand. My hands look so small. I've been so paranoid.
Yeah.
But your hands are so pretty. Wrapping it up with being a hand model, like George Costanza.
Oh, God.
There I go.
Costanza.
There we go. Seinfeld. There you go. Well, there's Yogi Berra. I think for a catcher back then, you had to have that for hands, anyways, because it's not like the mitts were fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
I actually think George Costanza and Yogi were the same size.
It might be true.
I hope not. I think he's 5'4", hopefully 5'3". In my mind, he's way short. Costanza. Well, that's what we have for Swing Batter. A couple stats to close it out. Dad, do you know the all-time double play balls that a player has hit in a season. If Yogi Berra was at 16, I believe it's 32, which is a lot of double play balls in a season.
That's
Jim Rice.
listen,
Jim Rice is number 1 and 2 in the grounded to double plays in 2 different seasons.
wow.
But when he hit a home run, it was a no doubter.
Yeah, that's true.
There's 2 players that are just massive, Mr. Rice and then Winfield, Dave Winfield.
I shook Dave Winfield's hand once.
Yeah, was it the size of your head?
I think he was shaking. I think it like touched my elbow.
He was known to play every sport, and he was good at all of them.
That guy is massive.
Yeah, these were just in the bat. The baseball bat looks so small on these guys.
Touched.
Oh, they're just a little catcher to a giant man.
Yep.
And I'm sure Yogi Berra had nicknames for them too. Well, there it is. So if you want to remember your family's names, give them nicknames. It's a lot easier than remembering the real ones. And more fun too, because the real names can get a little tedious at times. And as your host, Brendan, don't forget it, I bid you a wonderful evening. Hope you sleep good, enjoying the Yogi Berra stories. Thanks, Dad. Thanks for bringing it. Much more positive story than the last one.
I know.
All right, everybody.